Hello, beautiful ladies. Welcome back to Wamen Hour. And tonight I'm joined by a very beautiful lady, which is Galatea, also known as the Authentic Observer. Which do you go by?
Galatea. Galatea's fine. Whatever, whatever
Gally.
you feel like.
Gally to her friends.
That works too.
Sunbint on YouTube to others. I'm so glad to have you. And if you wouldn't mind me introducing your channel, you can say whatever you want about it afterwards, but I wanted to share my experience with how I discovered you and what it was like watching your channel. As someone who does something kind of similar to what you're doing, kind of the same age, we're both English. I was kind of like, watching your channel is kind of like a natural thing I do where I compare myself to other YouTubers. But so it started off, I think I first became aware of you because of your arguments with Vaush. How do you say it?
I don't know. I just say Vaush, but I don't think that's right. But also, I don't care. Either. So
so I was like, this is funny. Like you make really funny videos. Like you write a script and you deliver it like well. I don't know if you've got like theatrical training, but first thing I noticed is like you're funny and you're smart, and your politics, like your opinions, don't always align with mine, but it's always like interesting to watch. So that was my first experience, and then like shortly after that. Just looking through your channel now to get the timeline right. My next sort of biggest impression was when you started taking on what I'd call like the manosphere red pill types. And as someone who's got, like, at the start of my YouTube career, when I started talking about feminism, I got a lot of people in the comments from that side of YouTube. There's a very strong presence on YouTube of manosphere, red pill, anti-feminism. Back in the day, it was like massive.
Yeah.
And MGTOW as well was a big deal back then. So I got a lot of comments when I first started my channel from guys who wanted me to talk about that stuff. And the minute that I'd like dipped my toe into the topic and really like cautiously, carefully, like trying to be as reasonable and charitable as possible, tried to like engage with these ideas and push back a little bit on it, I got like a massive like face full of hornets. Amazing. Yeah. And then so I stumbled on your channel, and what you've done, because you're a lot more confrontational than me. Like it was the experience of like watching someone like pick up a hornet's nest and like shake it like violently.
That's how I felt. That's how I felt. Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? So antagonistic. So one of the topics on Twitter when I promoted this, I said that I wanted to talk to you about how to make enemies on YouTube, because seriously, it's like you turned up. I know you've been doing YouTube for ages, but my experience of watching your channel is that you turned up and you were just like, who can I piss off today? Like you, okay, you. I'll just like the people with the biggest YouTube presences are the people I'm going to target, and just like not just like assessing their arguments, but just also mocking them and making fun of them. And like you are really funny, so it kind of it comes across as very entertaining, but you're really not being, I don't want to say like careful at all in the way that I instinctively wanted to be.
I think I don't know where to start with that. Well, firstly, I think the part of the reason why I go, I think if I get like a charitable attitude back, then I think that's true with everyone. Then you're way more likely to be like way more diplomatic and charitable. But you're right, it is, and this is kind of what annoys me a little bit with that side of things, is that often they'll complain a lot about how oversensitive like the left is and how like oversensitive feminists are. And what I found from going sort of again into that is that they can be just as sensitive and just as unwilling to like it's kind of like say I don't want to put all feminists in the same box either, but it's like with the kind of extreme feminists, it's a kind of similar thing where you can agree with them on like 80% of things, then you disagree a little bit, and then suddenly you're cast out. It's like you're the antichrist or whatever. But I found a similar thing with not everyone in the manosphere, not all red pillars, not that whole thing, but there's a definite like attitude of you can go 80% of the way and then you're like, oh, hang on, not sure about this, and then suddenly they'll disown you. It's like it's the same. It's kind of a similar thing. It's kind of a bit of an echo chamber, and kind of oversensitive as well.
I think that, everyone, like if you're thinking about communities, it becomes like you're not dealing with individuals anymore, even if there are sometimes individuals, but everyone is sensitive about something. You just have to find what they're sensitive about. And no matter what community you're taking on, ideology, group, or whatever, you'll always be interacting with the most vocal of their members. So I think that was kind of an education for me. Finding what you found, which is that it doesn't matter what who you're taking on. There'll always be someone accusing you of this, accusing you of that, taking it extremely personally, no matter what. No matter who you're dealing with, who you're talking to. And similarly, the minute you start to be, if you're an outsider saying, oh, actually, I've been looking at this anti-feminism stuff and this is all looking really cool. This is making a lot of sense. Then it's all open arms and hugs and kisses and you're starting to take the red pill. That's really cool. Like you should look into this person, and you seem really smart. And then suddenly, like as soon as you start pushing back on it, you're the antichrist.
Yeah, there's that definite. Which is kind of I definitely found that with initially people like. Yeah, it is very ideological. People who previously would be very like welcoming, like you're saying, open arms, and then disagree on one thing or like, oh, I don't agree with this. Then immediately, you're stupid and crazy and insane, and I
don't know if the Sitchin Adam stream. I know those guys like reading Jonathan Haidt, but the Righteous Mind was a book written a while ago that's been very. That I found very helpful in thinking about the way that people, especially get emotional about their beliefs, where the more you make your beliefs like personal and emotional, the more it becomes easier to. I don't know, to get offended when someone tries to attack it. It feels like when someone's attacking these arguments, or if they're just like engaging with the arguments in a negative way, criticizing the arguments, it feels like they're attacking you, and you have to like go all in with like claws out.
It's human nature, I guess, isn't it?
Which I guess brings me back to your channel, where it feels like you are, like I say, like very confrontational. I don't know how much of that is like just for the entertainment effect, or how much you really do feel like animosity against like the people who you're taking out.
It varies probably. I mean, it's really weird. I don't really know how I've ended up here. I'm kind of slightly confused myself because I'm not really a confrontational person. And like
I find that hard to believe.
Yeah. Well, I never have been until and I've said this in the past. If someone comes at me aggressively, I've always found it really easy to stand up for myself. That's never been a problem for me. Even I was a really, really shy kid. Like, so you wouldn't believe how shy I was. Like, I have friends from school who were like, "I cannot believe you're doing YouTube. You couldn't even talk." Like, they're shocked. But I was so shy. But I was really shy. But also, if someone came at me aggressively, I don't know. I didn't find it hard to like say like go no. You can't. It was when So I guess with being kind of with YouTube, I haven't actually, except Pearl really is the first person that I've had a go at first. So with the others,
they came for you. It was like, you come into my house, like, like you've got a shotgun ready to point in their face.
Yeah, so I don't think I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have gone like, so initially with like Vorsh and Rolo, I wouldn't have really gone at them with that energy if they hadn't like come at me so hard initially. And with Vorsh, I kind of did set it off, but it was only, I think I talked about him for like maybe 2 minutes or 5 minutes within the context of an hour-long video, because I criticized him for his like women shut up whatever tweets. So I criticized him for that again within the context of a really long video, and I only spoke about him for like 2 to 5 minutes or something, and then he made an hour-long video. So then that was when he got like. So I don't know. I guess I can be confrontational if someone's coming at me like aggressively. It's like, okay, well, let's go for it. But in general, not so much. Maybe, I don't know. I've got a lot of siblings, so maybe it's like I'm used to having
to come back to the hornet analogy, like as soon as the hornet started flying in my face, I was like, okay, never mind. I'll look at something else. Like I'll just talk about something else. Like this is not worth engaging with. But instead it was almost like your reaction was like start shaking harder. Just
Yeah, but I'm a bit, maybe a bit bloody-minded.
I'll take on these hornets. Like, I'll show them what for. So I watched your video. I'm just thinking, your 2-hour video about red pill women, mostly targeted to just pearly things. I'm sure everyone watching this has been aware of Pearl just because her videos were so prolific that I think she was kind of gaming the algorithm for a while, and she must have been recommended to pretty much all of my viewers who are, watching women talking about feminism on your YouTube. I expect there was some crossover there with the audience, and so I was aware of her, and I really agreed with some of your criticisms, especially about kind of repetitive, kind of surface level arguments where she's just kind of taking on the same basic talking points that we've been talking over for like 5 years, pay gap, women and men are different, trans women in sports, the kind of stuff that I kind of got bored of talking about a while ago and just dropped it, went on to something else. But she's been kind of harping on that, gaming the system. She's done very well on YouTube. And you had a few issues with what she's saying, and with Ali Drummond, who's been on Wamen Hour before. So I guess I find it weird that, like you say, it's just you picked her as a target. Like, Pearl has never heard of you as far as we know, or come after you or anything. So I guess I'm kind of like, why? I've never seen anyone take on like red pill women before, almost, from the angle that you did. So I just wonder, like, how did you, why did you choose that?
Well, I think I said in the video that it, like, a lot of her kind of content had been irritating me a little bit for a while. But I wasn't planning to, like, do anything about it. But it was really the whole sex trafficking thing, that, like, conversation and that, around that, like, it was that, really. That was the main kind of point of it that I kind of wanted to talk about. That actually irritated me quite a bit, rather than like I feel like, I mean, Vorsh and Rolo, it kind of annoyed me and made me a bit angry, but in a more like light-hearted, playful way. I don't know. It kind of really kind of irritated me, that.
I think what Pearl's doing, you can kind of see it in the way that she does these sort of chats and interviews. It's like she's got her point, like her point of view is, you can kind of summarize it in like a 5-point list, and no matter what comes up, she's always got to go back to like, these are my opinions, like, pander to the male audience, basically, like take the male side of the argument. Like she's not really blatant about it. Like she'll go like, okay, sex trafficking is bad, but also or and this and that, and the same thing with the, I really hate to say it, the way she says grape, really that grape video that you mentioned in that video too, where it's like, why do you feel the need to, they call it counter signaling sometimes, why this? We get, like, you don't want to be a feminist, you want to like be sympathetic to male issues, female issues, accountability and all that, but like, did you really need to, like, did you really need to to take the opposed, like, some things you don't need to be contrarian about. It
does feel a little bit like, if there wasn't, like, that those opinions wouldn't be there to the same extent if feminism wasn't there. You know what I mean? It's like, kind of feels a little bit like that. I was going to say something else and I forgot what I was going to say.
I think, but it's the interesting thing. I don't really want to get bogged down in the really, dark issues of the, the trafficking and the other thing. But I actually, it's like I don't know why she felt the need to go there, other than just for like the engagement for the contrarianism. But I see where she's coming from, and I think you made a lot of really good points. But I think there is a space to ask women to take accountability for their actions, just like we make men be accountable to their actions. And we're talking about the especially the Andrew Tate situation with his girls. I think he definitely being manipulative, extremely creepy. Basically, I agree with everything you have to say about Tate, but I think there is still space to say to talk about the other side of it, like the women didn't have to do it. He isn't literally chaining them up, like you acknowledge that. That's not the only way that you can imprison someone. You can coerce them. That's obviously an important conversation to have, but there is still a space. I don't think Pearl delivered it well, but there's a space for a nuanced conversation about exactly how much responsibility the girls themselves have. Yes, of course, they could have come from a bad background. I probably almost certainly did. They probably didn't have much money. They were enticed by this and that. I think in a much more delicate way, in a much more delicate sort of situation where there's space for nuance and discussion, I am kind of interested in that conversation.
Yeah, but that wasn't my point. Wasn't even so much that it was. I mean, that was part of it. That depending on background and everything, but it was more so that, and who knows what will come out in the courts and everything. But based on what he himself was saying, and who knows, he could be lying or whatever else. But it was the element of deceit that I had a problem with. It's like,
yeah, absolutely.
If someone's deceiving someone, it's like, then that's not really that. Then they're not consenting. Because if it's a situation, and I think that's what people are kind of equating to. If there's a situation where women are doing camgirl work, and a man's there, like organizing it or doing whatever, I mean, I would still consider that man deeply immoral, and I don't like any of that. However, in that case, that I think there's a lot, maybe that is what happened. Maybe that is the thing that was going on with Andrew Tate. Then there's room to go, well, can they really blame him if they're, they can take some accountability and everything. But my point is, if the situation is that there's deceit involved, if he was using the lover boy method, which it seems more and more likely that he was, if we take him at his word, and maybe he didn't, maybe he's bigging it up, maybe it's not to that extent, but if you're deceiving someone, and there's elements of that involved, then that's a totally different situation. And while even then maybe there's some room to go, well, to what extent can they be accountable? I think definitely you can't let that person who's manipulating them off the hook at all. Because I think that's, I mean, whether it might even be illegal, who knows, to see what extent he's done, that too. But also I think what irritated me about Pearl's comments, that she seemed to be extending that wider to like the lover boy method in general. And I've kind of seen that a lot, that it's like, not recognizing that as a form of, if you're deceiving someone under false pretenses, then it's not actually consent. They're not consenting to it. And then you're, and it was that, and the lack of kind of understanding or compassion, or even from her, it seemed to be a complete unwillingness to even think about that side of things, or that there could be a kind of unwillingness to even look into that, if that makes sense.
That's what I want to say about like the format and the way that the conversation took place, where like when you're in a panel and everyone's trying to talk, you really like don't have the space to like to introduce nuance and to be really careful, which is why I don't think it's a very good format generally. Where they've got a lot of people who disagree, and they're all basically like competing to shout the loudest and say the quickest, the quickest point they can to land like the moral high ground or whatever. But I think No, I've lost it. So I think what you said about letting Tate off the hook is something that I've noticed a lot. And it took me ages to figure this out. Whenever I heard like loads of issues, especially around sex, where people are like, we can't let any blame slip away from the abuser, the manipulator, whatever. And I think when it's worded like that, it kind of makes it seem like blame is a zero-sum game. And if you make the victim, usually the woman in a situation, take any responsibility for making mistakes that led to it, that you're then somehow letting off the abuser a little bit or completely. When I just don't think that's the case. And it's one of the things I'm trying to do with this show is try to encourage women, especially, and women and men, to make good moral choices, especially around like sexuality and around like lifestyle, where there's a lot of room for these days everything that's not illegal is like morally permitted, right? Like there's that includes being like a manipulative pickup artist, or being a furry or a this. I'm not here to like make enemies with any particular sexual minority, but what I'm saying is not everything that is legal has to be encouraged or celebrated. And there are definitely, it took me ages to come to the conclusion that there are choices that can be legal that we don't have to celebrate, and that we can say with some confidence that there are some choices that will lead people to be unhappy, unhealthy later in life, compared to making what we might consider sort of healthier choices. And these bad decisions will impact the most vulnerable people in society the most. Yeah. And so I kind of knotting it all up there. But what I'm saying is that I don't think we should be too lenient on people who make these kinds of bad choices. People should be held responsible for the things they do, even if they are also the victims of awful abuse, manipulation, every kind of thing that life can throw at you.
I think there's certainly space for that, and I think in a lot of situations, I think that's actually, there's a level of like empowerment there as to feeling like that you're not at the whims of the world, and that you can, not always, but often there's a lot of choices you can make that will keep yourself safe, or that's empowering in a certain way. Specifically, just to briefly say, specifically with the Andrew Tate situation, it feels like people are doing that to take blame off him, and that's very much, I think, was certainly what Pearl was doing, which is why I got annoyed at that. Now, I'd be less hard on that if it felt like it was a more nuanced conversation of, okay, well, not if he's using deceit and that's he's doing something wrong, but also, well, are there better choices that people can make that don't lead them to those situations or whatever? There's room for that, but I think I've disagreement with it's all, therefore he did nothing wrong and we can't hold him accountable for anything, and that was very much, how it came about, I thought that was very much what Pearl was doing. But there's definitely, I think there's definitely a space for accountability, and actually, I think, and that's one of the kind of criticisms I would have of feminism, is that in a way I think sometimes it can disempower women, and it's actually not helpful if you're constantly overplaying, and sometimes there's it's necessary, sometimes it's useful, but you're constantly overplaying the victim narrative, and I think then it can feel like you don't have a way out, like that's actually not useful for women, not helpful for women.
Like the only way to help women is to completely restructure society. That disempowers women, but it empowers the political movement that they're trying to get attention for. So you have there's a constant conflict, I think, with feminism, with every single issue. There's the people saying that we need radical structural changes, we need changes to the laws, we need to overthrow the people in power and put someone better in power. And the only way you can do that is to make it seem completely hopeless otherwise. Which I think is what leads a lot of this sort of women can't help it. There's no way that you can empower yourself because the system is just so awful.
Yeah.
And that's maybe not intentional, but that's usually where a lot of these issues go for that reason. I believe anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I think there is that. I dislike that attitude as well. Yeah. I think, and I know feminists there've been a few feminists in the past who've been accused of. I think also there's a distinction that needs to be made between like victim blaming, like blaming someone for what happened, and also and acknowledging that there's steps people can take to lessen chance. Does that make sense? Because I know in the past some feminists have been accused of victim blaming when actually they're like teaching women how to recognize red flags, or to like want to kind of educate women, like, hey, it's better if you don't do this, like those kind of things. Well, I would think that's a good thing, and that's kind of empowering and saying, here's ways that you can recognize, manipulation, or here's ways you can recognize red flags, or here's what you can do if you're in that situation, which are all really good things. And I would say very like feminist things, but you do get a certain, I don't want to put everyone in the same box, but you do get a certain faction of that who are then like, oh, hang on, you're victim blaming. It's like, no, that they are like two very different things, and I feel like they're kind of getting merged now, and it's not good.
No, I think of it like wearing a seatbelt. Like you're not wearing a seatbelt is not making you responsible for the car crash. Like you could be, it's still keeping you safe, so still wear it. It doesn't matter if if the car crash is your fault or not. Be safe out there, ladies. Maybe that comes on to our next point that I wanted to talk to you about. And maybe that's good. In that same video where you're talking about a lot of those things that Pearl was talking about, you also brought up this clip from Ali Drummond. What's the channel's name? I can't remember.
The Real Femme Sapien, I think.
Yeah, Real Femme Sapien, yeah. And like I said, she's been on the channel, and in the clip, I actually didn't really disagree with anything she was saying. I don't know if exactly what the context was, if she was like, if she'd got this question like directed to her, or if she was just reading someone's agony on sort of article online. But her advice, and we talked about this when she came on the channel, is about, maybe you can remember this better than I, it was like serving your husband or submitting to one's own husband.
So my problem with that, and I mean, hopefully, I don't know, I've kind of been speaking to her a little bit, so I hope she and I might speak at some point.
Oh, that's nice.
So that would be good. So my problem with that was, so from what the setup of the video, from what I believe it was a comment, someone had said, you can still, I can't remember exactly what the comment was, but it was something like, you can still respect your husband without submitting to him. I'm a stay-at-home mother, and my husband and I are in an equal partnership. And her comments to that, see, if that's the advice she's giving, or if that she's saying that's how she lives her life, I don't have any problem with that. I don't even have a problem if she's saying, well, if you want to live your life this way. But and this might not have been her intention or anything, but from how the video was presented, was that she implied that this woman didn't really respect or admire her husband because of that. But the thing with that is that's not just a comment at that one specific woman. So then that's taken out to every woman who would say that they don't submit to their husband. So that's then, and I think part of the reason that like annoyed me slightly as well, it's like, well, you kind of got a young woman, I don't know how old she is, but she's a young woman who's then talking about all these women who would say that they don't submit to their husbands, but still love him and respect him and have great marriages. So that's then, okay, so she's just implied that my mother doesn't respect and love my father, because they would say they have an equal partnership. She's just implied that my grandmother, again, women a lot older than her and have been married, ages. And it was that. It's not that she's saying I submit to my husband and this is, how I think the best way is. It's that it was the implication that woman didn't respect her husband properly or didn't appreciate her husband. And then, yeah, like I say, I mean, and I don't think necessarily this was how Ali would have considered it when she sort of did that video, but then of course it's been taken out. Well, all women who wouldn't say their marriages are set up in that way, like I said again, so I'm thinking my mum is like, who I know is a very devoted wife and loves my father very much and admires him. It's like, okay, that's like, you know, I'm like, okay, well that's directed at her as much as, you know, then all the other women who would say that, and my grandmother, and, you know, so it's like, that was why I took such issue with that, because I don't think that's, you know, I just don't think that's true, that if you consider your marriage an equal partnership and you wouldn't describe yourself as submitting to your husband, it's not true that you have less respect for him, you don't admire him, you don't like, I just don't think that's true. And I find it offensive implying that he kind of is, you know. So that was my problem there.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I've got it on the screen here. If you wanted to have the if people watching, go and watch the video, of course. But I'll just summarize it here. The question that Ali was asked was, "I'm a stay-at-home wife. You don't need to submit to your husband in order for them to treat you well and be a there's an acronym, stay-at-home mum. It's an equal partnership." Yeah, I think it's. I guess that it's really difficult because the words submit and the words equal are like doing so much heavy lifting in this argument, where you can get two people who completely agree about like how a man and a wife, a husband and wife should relate to each other, and they'll think that they have completely opposite opinions because they're just defining the word submit and equal completely differently.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing as well. Some people have really like negative connotations associated with that. So that also kind of annoyed me. I know people who have really like negative. I mean, because I just don't think submit is necessarily a good word to use, because it's got so many negative connotations as well, and it's used in all sorts of bizarre contexts. That I know some people have a really like the visceral reaction. They're like, oh, like, and really like, and it could. Some people have really like bad things attached to that. So again, that's kind of, I was kind of irritated by that. It's like, well, yeah, it might be someone that agrees on pretty much everything, and just doesn't like that word, or has, you know. So that was partly.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess just more broadly, like I said, this is something I've struggled with, and I talked about it on my channel before. Yeah, I've been doing this for a while, and for ages, I found it really hard to make these kind of generalized statements, like. You know, like telling people it's better for a wife to submit to her husband. And I still don't say, that's not something I would say, because that word has got so much baggage. But even just to make an assessment about, you know, certain kinds of marriages are better than certain kinds of other ones, where for a while I really felt like I wasn't in a position to judge anyone else's choices about anything. But, you know, I see it kind of... I've seen it over and over again where, you know, obviously it's like a one sentence question, so she doesn't know what's going on with this woman's marriage or whatever. But in general, the pattern that I see, and I think Ali's, you know, we talked about this in the interview with her, so I won't go over it too much. But it does seem like generally what I see is that women aren't respecting their husbands enough, I'd say. I don't. Obviously, I can't really judge people based on like the surface level interactions, but I just got to say, and this isn't, I'm not saying this is your point of view or anything, but what I really hate is when I'm talking to women in private when their husbands aren't there, and they put down their husbands and they say bad things about them. And I hate it when men do it about their wives too, but I'm usually not privy to that, because they, you know, that's not what men do when there are women present.
Obviously, I wouldn't endorse that, and that's not good, and that's terrible. But I would sort of say that's like, I don't know, it seems a bit like a false dichotomy. I don't know why then, in order to have respect, there needs to be submission. That would be my thing there. It's like, well, you can have respect without that.
I just think...
I mean, if people want to do that, I don't have a problem with it, but I think, you know...
I think what Ali's doing is she's noticed this pattern. This is what we talked about when she came on the channel. It's like, she's noticed that this is a pattern among women, among marriages. We know that there's a lot of divorce. There's a lot of sort of marital strife. Infidelity is completely rife. You know, people are just completely losing faith in marriage as like a concept. And her diagnosis, well, one thing that she's noticed that she's trying to fight back on is like, you can submit to your husband. You can be, you can serve your husband and not be a complete doormat. You can empower yourself by lifting up your husband, and putting him in that role of like protector and of like, I don't want to say, if I say master, it sounds like you're a slave. And
Probably
all
another
this
word
language,
with a lot of baggage to it. Yeah,
there's a lot of baggage to a lot of this
Masculinity
stuff, but I think that's what she's trying to do. Well, that's what I'm reading into it, at least, is to try to remove this negative baggage around all of this. It's kind of what I was saying about Pearl. Like, so she's got this mission, right, where she's saying, like, I think women would be happier, I think men would be happier if women wouldn't be so sensitive about putting themselves, letting their husbands lead them. That's the language she uses that's a bit less full of baggage. And so whenever she gets a question or an argument or whatever, she's always going to take that position because that's become her mission to spread this as like as a gospel, as advice in general for everyone, because that's her thing.
Yeah. Well, again, if people want to do that and that works, then that's absolutely fine. I wouldn't. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how we'd be able to determine that the reason for high divorces and marriages falling apart is because, women aren't respecting or submitting to their husbands. Maybe that's one factor, but there's so many other things in the modern age that could be kind of contributing to that. So yeah, I think could be part of it, but I don't know if I don't think there's enough information to kind of assume that and then take that and then diagnose that to all women in all marriages and say if women would just submit that, I can't. I'm not entirely convinced by that. And yeah, I don't think. I come back. I don't think that, and it depends how people define it again and what that kind of connotations they have to it. But I don't think that submission is necessary for respect, for love, for admiration, for a long and happy marriage. And that might well be the ideal state for some people, and that's that's fine. But I wouldn't. I'm unconvinced that that submission's necessary for, like, as I say, kind of admiration and to trust your husband. And you know what I think, and I've kind of mentioned this. I talked about this over on Patreon actually, but I would actually use the word trust rather than submit. I think that's in terms of like a masculine feminine dynamic. If people are going to talk in traditional terms. I think I'd put the word trust there, that the wife like trusts her husband as opposed to submit. I think that fits a lot better.
That is nicer, yeah.
And has a lot of less weird connotations, and also it implies there that you're not going to be disrespecting him, and you're going to trust him and trust in certain situations. And earlier you said in regards to respecting your husband's leadership, I would again say, well, in what context? Because I think in some contexts, of course he'll know what to do and probably be the best leader in that situation, but in other situations he might not be, and you might well know. So I would say I think trust is a better word. But
that's a very nice word. And I'm very interested in it's like I'm taking on a project where I'd like to find every concept that's got that's got this like awful baggage attached to it that people think is awful. I'd like to find a new, better word for like every single thing, so that we can talk about this stuff and people don't like immediately get triggered by saying, when you listen to and trust your husband. So yeah, I'm going to use that one. That's a good one. I like it. But I wanted to use that as a segue to talk about femininity and not just submission, but just this. Like all things feminine have become a little bit sort of out of fashion with, I think, women, where femininity is just kind of associated with being weak, like being boring and silly. People don't think being girly is like a good thing. It's kind of sounds like you're being soppy, like a wet blanket. You're not fun or cool. Being feminine is just kind of lame. So that's. I think that's a real problem, and that's another thing that I've like taken it on as my mission for Wamen Hour, is just to be like, it's all right to be feminine, and I would encourage women to be feminine, especially if if
My
they
thumbnails. Sorry, I was just distracted by how stupid my thumbnails are. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
I love it. And this is something that you took this on really well. I love this video. You can see the ones I think I watched all of this one, but there was a quote that you said in a video that I couldn't find, and I kept going back around to it. So sometimes these videos, it looks like I haven't watched them all, but I think I watched all of your videos about femininity because the first video I watched.
Why have I've just titled them ridiculous things? Okay, sorry.
I love it. The YouTube game is on point. But I thought you summarized some points about femininity so well. I think I left a comment saying I wish I had made this video because the points you made were so good and so needed as well. Talking about using Galadriel as an example of a feminine character that was done very well, being feminine but not being weak. And then turning it into girl boss with a sword in this stupid armor. And just taking that not just as a point, but like you like caught that and ran with it, and you had all these like literary sources and references to make, and I think you just made the points really well about femininity is everything. It's everything soft, and it's the what is it like? It's the feminine is like the color within the lines,
Did I say that? I don't know if I said that.
Oh, maybe not. Maybe that's why I couldn't find but it's like masculinity and femininity are not like good and bad. It's like you need both to have like a rich culture, to have a rich society and a rich family life. Yeah. They're both like really good flavors. Like, it's like having like chocolate and peanut butter. You need both to be distinct. And I think what's happened is that people think that being feminine is something that's been imposed on women and to make them feel weak, and that they have to reject the femininity to be strong. Yeah. And that on the other side of things, they're also encouraging men to be softer because because even masculinity is also kind of destructive and toxic and too aggressive.
It's that old thing, really, isn't it? That masculinity's only okay when women do it. That
completely.
Which I think's probably causing a lot of problems. No, I definitely agree with all that, and I'm on board with all that, and that's something that that's always irritated me. And again, people get annoyed when I generalize all feminists, so I don't, again, not everyone, but there's a definite, and it's a mainstream strain of feminism that definitely does see femininity as weak or silly or frivolous. And I think that's partly why I got quite irritated at the red pill side of things, because I kind of went into that on the surface. Yeah, on the surface they say that they value femininity, and then you and some of them do, but some of them you scratch a bit and you go, oh, hang on, wait, no, you also think it's silly and frivolous and weak and all of these things that, and I'm kind of not down with that. But also that's not gonna appeal to most women. I think most women, like, if you're annoyed by feminism and you don't want women to kind of go all the way that way into feminism, you're just going to push them that way if you're just kind of expressing those kind of ideas, I think.
I think that there's something that I've had to come to terms with that sort of red pill manosphere side of things, and I've just got to sit down and go, like, this wasn't made for me. Like, this is like, I feel like I've started to think of it like I'm pressing my ear to like the boys' locker room and hearing like all the things they're saying about their girlfriends. Yeah. I'm like, they're not saying that to me, or like they're not talking about me. Like, just let them. Like, it's just men talking to men about like stuff, and they might say that they think women are silly, and because they think that's funny, right? They're just joking around with their guy friends, and they, you kind of don't take them completely seriously.
Well, I'd say there's an aspect to it that's like that, and again, there's nothing like wrong with, and there's men and women have been taking the piss out of each other forever, like jokes about men, jokes about women. I don't have any issue with that, but I think there is a definite kind of there is some parts there's a definite, like, it's a bit darker than that, and kind of a dislike of women that's kind of like, oh, okay, that seems a little less lighthearted. But I think, and yeah. So I guess if not taken hugely seriously, it's not the worst. But
we've got a good comment from Alice Liddell, 1872. What a great name. We said so. This is super chat for £10. Thank you very much. I've read Steve Moxon, Women Racket, and F. Roger Devlin's Sexual Utopia in Power. I don't know either of those books. I haven't read much feminist literature. Evolutionary psychology arguments make sense to me. I don't get the excuse to be Cad's argument from the manosphere, though. Yeah, well, that's been a massive debate going on for among the people I follow on Twitter and YouTube and everything. There's the kind of more like Christian trad side that's encouraging men to settle down and get married and have as many children as they can, and then there's the kind of more manosphere side of things who are encouraging a more encouraging men to be sort of sexually adventurous and then settle down like eventually if they feel like it. I'm not going to get into that here because it is such a massive debate that's been going on for ages, and like with most things, I feel like I can understand both sides, but I also
that is kicking the hornet's nest, I think, with that one as well.
Yeah, I love that about your videos as well. It's just appealing to, like, you have this great, I don't think you kind of dance around it without like ever coming to a firm definition of it, but I love the way that you conceptualize masculinity in a quite nuanced way, where it's not a soy boy, stay at home dad, weak man who's been henpecked by his wife,
No.
but it's not the like bloodthirsty warrior either, where you appeal to these men in your family, like your father, your grandfathers, and is it your great grandfathers you talk about? Yeah, these working class sort of family that you come from.
I like storytelling, so I kind of went through, and it's true. So it's all true, but I obviously, told it in a story-like way. But yeah, I went through a few generations of like my mum's side of the family to my granddad's side, and then to my granddad. But well, yeah, because I feel like, immensely lucky to have had like my dad. He's great. He's not by any stretch a weak man, but he's also not like this kind of caricature of like brutal. Like he's not like that at all. And I think like most people, most people I feel like aren't like that. They kind of have a balance. And then like my granddad, who I feel very lucky to have known him. Very, very brave man, very strong man, mentally very strong as well. And a really good man. That's the thing that I feel like that's what I kind of emphasize, because I really admire that and I think people equate, and I understand why they do that, but because when I talk about like goodness or like kindness, I get a lot of pushback from men being like, well, women don't like nice guys, women, and it's like no, if you're talking like nice guys who are like easily put like pushovers, women don't like that, you're right. Or if they're, and also I feel like there's something a little bit self-serving in that, in the kind of nice guy, where it's a little bit, there's a little bit of weakness to that. And so with that, I'd agree with you, but that's not, I think people are equating that with it, just because being a doormat or a pushover, that's not the same as being good or kind. And I think most women actually really do value kindness and goodness, but it's just, if you're equating being like a pushover or just really, a doormat with that, then you probably aren't going to get results. But I think being good and kind of selfless in that way shouldn't be sacrificed just to not come across as too nice. You can have both. You can have boundaries and be a strong guy and not let people treat you badly and still be like a good person. And the men in my family are like that. So yeah.
Well, I don't want to come back to that the argument about the submitting to your husband again, but that's kind of, I think you're absolutely right about men, but I also think that's the same about women, where if a woman hears that she has to submit to her husband, she's visualizing being a doormat and just being yes dear, and suppressing all of her anger and all of her own desires for the sake of a man. But really, there's strength. There's a real strength both in men and women to have a confrontation without it getting overly emotional, immature, violent. And
yeah, of course.
That's really what's required from both men and women. It's not a masculine or a feminine thing. Letting your temper rule your interactions. Losing your temper, losing control. That's I'd say that's neither masculine nor feminine. That's just bad behavior.
Well, it's immature.
It comes out differently in men and women, but I think it's always immature unless you're literally in like on a battlefield and you need that rage in order to kill someone who's trying to chop your head off.
That's fair. That's fair, but
yeah. And maybe that's a good segue to our final topic that I was really interested in. I think this was your video you take. I've stopped sharing now, but when you were talking about that 2 hours 52 minutes talking about Rollo Tomasi, the rational male, and like I said, shaking the hornet's nest until there was no hornets left in there and they're all just ready to kill you.
He came at me first though, he totally misinterpreted everything I was saying, and I mean so. I think you're
completely right about a lot of the things you said about there, but there was one interesting thing that he said, probably not in the most eloquent or nuanced way, that I thought he was right about, that I wanted to bring to you, which is this idea that women are and men become, which is the name of the stream that I wanted to bring to you. And I think am I right in saying you had issue with that?
Well, so the thing with this is that with that statement, I then had, and which is about to go up on Patreon actually, I had another 25 minutes of that video where I talked about that statement in that video, but it was too long. I kind of ended up cutting that. But basically he was arguing, it basically said that you can never have a good hero's journey with a woman in the lead because women just are, so it will never work and never make sense. And he was like, that basically that it's impossible. And he said that the original Mulan as well.
The whole Mulan thing.
That the original Mulan, she just was a good warrior from the beginning, and it's a bad story because she was naturally talented. And I'm like, that's not the movie. Like, she's bad at the beginning. She has to work at it. So really, that was in reference to like that, because I think that's a ridiculous statement. Of course, you can have a woman could go on a hero's journey, and of course, you can have that, and it be a good story. And that was what Mulan was. But I think. So the context in which the red pillars kind of use that, women just are, men must become, is that, and I understand there's some truth to that. So in the sense that, if a woman is young and beautiful, she'll find it easy to, find a husband or whatever. But a man's kind of got to become something in order to be seen as like desirable. There's a level of truth to that on that level, but in terms of how much you can kind of expand that much beyond then and apply that to like a life or a woman's journey through life, or like stories start like heroes' journeys or heroines' journeys, I think that's a bit very oversimplistic and a little bit ridiculous, like to put it on kind of on that scale. But I don't know.
I don't know if you saw my video about this. You said when I first emailed you, you said you might have watched some of my videos.
Yes,
on this subject.
I think a few years ago, I might have even mentioned it in a video. I feel like I watched one of your videos a while ago.
Well, I got stuck on this question of what is can women have a hero's journey? Obviously, you can just put a woman in a story and it will still be interesting. In a male role, maybe not. You might get into arguments about if it'll be quite as interesting or whatever. But I became interested in the subject of like what is the female version, like what is the archetypal female journey through life, like what is the wisdom that you can distill into a story that will teach women exactly what it's going to take for them to be a winner, to do like to have what is the best in life. I don't know if you watched Conan the Barbarian, but like what is best in life for women? It's like you're not gonna need to go out and slay a dragon, and I couldn't quite. I'm like, what is the female version of slaying a dragon?
Well, I don't know. It depends in what context, because in some contexts you might have to go and slay a dragon. I mean, like in what sense?
Well, I get
because the thing, like, I understand in like the context of it's normally men who go out and like will physically fight something, but in the context of like life, if you're using that as metaphors, that almost implies that then there's not like challenges that women have to face and fight or like stand up for themselves. And I think of course there's scenarios where women have to do that, and would that not be the kind of metaphorical slaying of a dragon? I don't say that right.
Yes, I think you might be right. Yes, there are times where women need to embody this slightly more masculine approach to problem solving. Let's just call it in the most broad sense. I didn't leave a pause there because I was putting this on you to answer this question. I thought you had something. I didn't want to interrupt you, but it's a difficult question. But my video, I was talking about Mean Girls. I think Mean Girls is the female hero's journey, where Kate, you know Mean Girls. You're the same age as me. You must have. Katie Heron, she starts off with almost everything she needs right at the start. This is like women are, right? She starts off and she's kind of incompetent. She fish out of water. She doesn't know where she is or what she's doing, and she's kind of lonely. But the Mean Girls is about her being corrupted. And I think women start off like pure little angels, and the female hero's journey is to not be corrupted, like to not allow the world to like wear you down into a cynical, manipulative person.
I agree with that to some extent, and that in one of my latest videos I kind of talked about that. I think there's a theme of endurance there, but also there has to be. I mean, yes, there's Mean Girls is kind of a story of corruption, but also she does, like, I think it's a woman's journey through life is not just that she endures and keeps like good and kind-hearted or whatever. Obviously, she's got to do some level of character development. Like,
but she doesn't have to kill Regina George.
But men don't.
Or even like to topple her, like metaphorically. Like she befriends Regina George.
Well, she does. She kind of sabotages her. It's in a more feminine way. But I mean, like, if we're taking it literally, I mean, men don't really have to do that now, either.
But that was the wrong thing to do.
What?
Taking down Regina George wasn't, it was a fun like thing to watch, but it turns out that wasn't like the right way to go about things.
Well, in the way she did it, but toppling Regina in itself wasn't the bad thing, it kind of, and she did become something different by the end, so she became more balanced. So in the beginning it was that she was
she changed,
so she didn't just go back to how she was at the beginning, she became balanced. Basically it was, I guess you could say it was more story about integrating a shadow, because she hadn't she was so naive, and she wasn't a developed enough person yet, because she couldn't stand up to corruption. That was kind of the point. Like, she didn't have that inner strength yet.
Yes.
So she did have to become something and go through tests and challenges and and change. And by the end of it, she had the goodness that she had at the beginning, but with a more like mature, like discerning
resilience.
Yeah, but and a discerning she could see then. Like, but and she could no longer be tempted really at that point. It's kind of, well, she's kind of known the tempted by power. She's kind of seen that and gone, okay, no, I'm so it is in that sense, like it is she does become something. I mean, is it the same as a archetypally masculine hero's journey? Probably not, but it's not that she just was, and that and like I say, there is some level of truth to that, and I think especially in like theme of endurance, but I don't think it's quite as simple as that, and especially if we're talking like individual women's lives. I think I mean, I'm in no way the same as I was when I was like 12 or even like 15. I couldn't speak to anyone, so in that, like, even just that very simple sense, I've had like a journey of having to have my own kind of dragons and like learn how to speak up and like kind of develop that part of my character, because that part of my character was something that wasn't good enough or like developed.
I think men and women both have things to learn from the hero's journey and the heroine's journey, or the female and the male, the masculine and the feminine. I think we do have to be careful not to assume like women only are feminine. and men are only masculine.
Yeah, that's not.
To be properly integrated, I think both men and women need to learn both. In Lord of the Rings, another one of your something you talk about on your channel. I think men have to be both Frodo and they need to be Aragorn. They need to learn to be the hero, the strong warrior, but they also have to resist corruption and value their friendship and their endurance, which, Frodo is obviously a man, but I think that side of Lord of the Rings is a slightly more feminine kind of hero's journey, where really it was him resisting the temptation of the ring, enduring the suffering. His friendship with Sam ended up being the thing that saves him, the thing that really matters. And the fighting and Gollum and everything like that was all like there too. I guess Gollum is kind of like the Regina George, or in this scenario, like kind of like a cautionary, like don't be like this guy.
It's interesting you say that, because The Hobbit was always like my favorite. It's my first ever favorite story as a kid. Bilbo is like my first ever hero, but I like looking back on it. It's quite a feminine story in a way, like the Hobbits. Yeah, it is a lot of ways more like a kind of feminine journey, or like befriending, and the Mercy's more highly like what's the word? More, I can't remember the word, but more emphasis. Yeah, more emphasis placed on like mercy. And those kind of traits. And yeah, Bilbo's story, I think, is quite. I think I related to it because he was really small and not very compared. It is kind of a feminist story in that way, and he's got to rely on his wits, and then like an inner goodness as well to kind of thrive.
Well, so does I think Odysseus is one of my favorite masculine archetypes to keep going back to, because he is strong, but he relies on his wits a lot, and he has his wife at home. That's like my favorite thing about Odysseus, is that he's always going towards his wife. And on her side, she's resisting all of these suitors, all the temptation to move on and to give up on her husband, who's most likely dead. I think the Odyssey has that has both archetypes kind of nailed there, where the man is the one out adventuring, having all the fun adventures, slaying trolls and things. But the wife's counterpoint to that is to hold up his home. In his absence, she's in charge of the home, of the family, and her only job is to like fight off these suitors who want to come and take his wife and take all of his stuff. So I think he's not what do you call it, a cad?
No.
Actually, have you read Watership Down or seen the movie of that?
No, I keep getting told, but I know it's really sad, and I don't want to cry. So.
Well, I think Watership Down is kind of. I've been having this argument for a while now that Watership Down is the Hobbit for women. Like hobbits basically are like rabbits. Like it even sounds like rabbit hobbit. They are like these trickster like animals that they're so weak. Like they have no, they don't predate any other animals. They're just these prey animals that can only evade and trick their predators. They're not quite hobbits, but they in terms of story structure, it's got that same kind of ring to it.
Yeah, I know I really should like watch it or read it at some point, but I just know it's just going to be so sad. And I never got over Bambi, so
I love the. I think it's bittersweet though. The like the thing with the Watership Down movie is it's really horrific at the beginning, like so scary. I wouldn't show it to like any kid like below the age of like 8, and some adults would still find it quite disturbing. But yeah, the sad stuff is just bittersweet. It's not really sad. It's gory and bittersweet, I'd say. Brilliant. I love it. I love the book and the film for slightly different reasons. Like all good adaptations.
I'll have to
changed just enough.
I'll have to. Maybe I'll be tempted. I'll have to give it a read and a watch then.
Yeah, it's great. I'm looking forward to my daughters being old enough that I can read it as a bedtime story, because it's quite long. It's like longer than The Hobbit. Like there's so many things that happen with these rabbits.
Is it? I didn't realize it's that long. That's long, yeah. All
right. Well, that's been an hour, and we don't call it a Wamen hour for nothing. So, is there anything you want us to talk to me about? I don't think we have any more super chats, but I'm going to do a double check right now.
I can't. I don't know. I can't think. I can't think of anything in particular. Anything else you wanted to ask?
Well, let's just check the super chats. But yeah, what's your next video about? Why not that?
So it was supposed to be part of this one I did on Pearl. Again, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like this might well be my last kind of dive into the kind of red pill side of things. I said I kind of do it for as long as I had things to say, and as long as I found it interesting, and then kind of move on. I have a weird relationship with doing like critical stuff. I like being critical in a way, and I think I'm kind of good at it, or not bad at it. But then also, I don't know how much I enjoy it. I'm someone I do kind of want to kind of. I feel like yeah, I don't know. I sometimes I get a bee in my bonnet and I've got to say something, but then I kind of want to go in a more positive direction. I think talk more about femininity in the positive. Yeah, rather than just critiquing that side of things. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, so. I mean, I think it is really you are really funny, and I think that humor really shines when you're like roasting somebody. But I do also feel like it'd be better if you used your powers for good rather than rather than attacking people.
Yeah, well, you do. To be fair, yeah, they mostly come at me first, and I feel like it's in a lot justified, but you know, who knows? So.
That's fair. All right. We do have another super chat that I did miss, so I'm glad I double checked. That's my New Year's resolution, is to read all of them, and I haven't missed one yet. So we've got unrelated to the guest, who has been great. That means you. I think I've read this already. Maybe you can help me figure out what this means. New sentence. I think a good summation of autism is effectively all the aspects women hate about men magnified. Have fun. Okay, so I think he's saying that women hate the autistic aspects of men, or that's autism is just the pathologizing of male masculinity, male aspects of personality, maybe like the intensive analytic.
Well, the aspects that women don't like.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with this, but
I don't know. Right.
I think that's what
my cousin, he's severely autistic. He's a sweetheart. A lot of women like him. So
yeah, there seems like autism. It's always come to mean two things, where you get like the severely autistic, like basically the disability where people can be completely non-verbal, like they cannot live independently.
My cousin was non-verbal till he was about 11, I think. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, but then when people say, this is a super chatter here, saying severely autistic, I don't know if he means that literally or if he just means, these men who may or may not have Asperger's syndrome, who are like intensely analytical and obsessed with particular topics, and taking things really literally. And I've been accused of having. I should say I've been diagnosed with autism by people on the internet because I think because I have this sort of analytical way of taking things quite literally and passing things out into just the most literal way possible and analyzing it like a formula. I don't know if I've taken tests that have shown that I don't pass the first sort of diagnosis screening test for having autism or Asperger's, but it kind of manifests differently in women, so who knows. For £5, we also have from QAZDR6. Thank you very much, £5. Take for granted that in history, median man can't expect to marry or reproduce. Given what obligations ought men... given this, what obligations ought men, women, and society have regarding each other? Again, another super chat. Brilliant. I love it when the super chat tries to get as much out of their question in the shortest number of characters possible. Props to you. I love it. I love the grift. Okay, so most men in history can't expect to marry or reproduce. Given the consequences of this, what obligations ought men, women, and society have regarding each other?
Well, monogamy is probably a good one. That to kind of alleviate some of that problem, I think.
Yeah, if the problem is that men are forming harems that are taking up all of the women. Yeah. I think the modern dating scene is a bit like a return to the harem situation where on dating websites. Supposedly, I have no way to confirm this, but apparently the experience of men is that most men get nothing, and then there's a few men who have really good dating profiles who get the different girl every night if they want it.
Yeah, I think it's such a bad idea unless you're like really really good looking. I think to go on a dating app as a guy, because I think like. But I feel like it's just gonna be really difficult. Whereas there are so many guys that I know who are like really successful with women, like in person. They're just going to the pub because they're really charming or they're really funny or whatever. So I think, that definitely counts for a lot.
I think monogamy was a good solution for everyone, including the men who are ostensibly benefiting from having a harem. I think probably that's not optimal for personal like growth.
No.
I think having two people who are completely committed to each other is optimal if both of those people are committed emotionally and they've decided that they're in it for the long haul, to better each other and to better themselves for each other's benefit. Because when you've got to face the same person every day, no matter what you've done, then you better treat them right, and you better try and be a better person.
Holds yourself accountable, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, you'd hope so. I know I think marriage has been like a big source of grief for men and women, like throughout history. Like I really don't try to paint like traditional marriage as anything great, because I think a lot of men had jobs that took them away from their wives for like years at a time, and you can't imagine they were too good at getting along with each other in those few weeks or months that they did spend together.
Yeah.
It's always been an issue. It's just that people didn't used to have the option of getting divorced, so it didn't really manifest in that way. That's the super chats. That's a really big topic. I don't know if we can. I think we both agree monogamy would be a good short answer.
A good starting point to that. Yeah.
You have to pay me more than £5 to take that on as a full episode.
Lay out a full manifesto of all the responsibilities, obligations men and women should have. Restructure society. Yeah, that's quite a big task. So,
number 1, make sandwiches. Number 2, listen to me talking about my problems. All right, we've got I forgot to mention that I do have another stream where we talk about movies that's been going well. It's called the PO Box. I'll have to figure out what PO stands for, but we've got a tie between Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan and what was the other one? Steel Rain. There was a competition between those two. I have not watched either. I haven't figured out which one I'm supposed to watch yet because there was a bidding war. But I'll be watching one of those films this weekend, and I'll be reviewing it with my husband next week. So tune in for that. And thanks everyone for watching. Thank you so much to Galatea for joining us. There's a link to Galatea's channel in the description, so go ahead and follow that. I'm just going to double check it isn't. Yep, there it is. Link to the channel. You can watch her huge videos of wide-ranging of topics.
Right on.
Yeah, it's great. Brilliant channel. And yeah, thanks everyone. Have a good week. Bye bye.